Redditors who grew up with strict parents, what was the craziest rule or punishment you had to deal with? I got grounded from an end of year party. I was 11, for getting a B on a paper, even though I still got all A's. I was devastated. It was thrown by my best friend, and I was never allowed to do anything, and I had been looking forward to it all year. I had the perfect dress to wear, because my aunts, via marriage, mother had taken me shopping and bought this cool dress that made me feel like Molly ducking Ringwald. I was never allowed to wear it before, and it had been in my closet since September. I was seriously having a Cinderella moment. Although I honestly related more to Jane Eyre, because I was adopted and a bookworm. The day of party I'm bawling. I'm a good kid. I try to be perfect every waking moment. Now I'm grounded from my best friend's party. The mom of my best friend knows how tough it is at home. I'm screamed at, belittled, hit all the time. This party was a ducking beacon. Arlene, the BFF's mom, barges in my house. Tells me to get ready and get my stuff together, because I'll be spending the night. My mom protests. How about I call Child Protective Services about the 50 ducking cats in your house? I go to the party and Arlene teaches me to be a badass. As the eldest son of a Southern Baptist preacher, I was held to some high standards. Being seen and not heard, and that my every action was a reflection of my father as a leader to his congregation. I found music to be great outlet, but of course any non-Christian music was not allowed, and immediately destroyed upon discovery. Spare the rod, spoil the child was a mantra ingrained in my daily life. Once I was into my teens, and spankings with stretched out coat hangers was no longer enough to be considered punishment due to the lack of tears, my father moved on to shaving my head. Nothing like the constant reminder of how unworthy one is once their physical source of personal identity is forcibly removed. My grandmother was a retired English teacher. One day, I called my brother stupid. I was 4 or so. She filled me in on her rule that, if I couldn't spell stupid, but I called someone stupid, then it was really me that was stupid. Thus, I should never call someone a name that I couldn't spell. So in my 4-year-old head, rather than avoid name calling, realized that I did know how to spell dumb, so that word must be permitted. I spent the rest of the day overusing the word dumb, and she wasn't quite sure what to do at that point. I dealt with a narcissistic/abusive mother. Most of my punishments weren't huge, because I was a really good kid, but on my 18th birthday, because I asked for gas money the day before, the first time ever, she took mine and her car keys with her to work, and took the shed key, no garage, so I couldn't even ride my bike, and left a note on the kitchen table saying, "Happy 18th, now you're an adult, so get out of my house." I spent my birthday alone, trapped, and miserable, all over $10. My mother is a malignant narcissist, obligatory plug to r/raised by narcissists. So the rules in my childhood home went from bad to straight up disturbing. Could only shower twice a week. We lived on a pig farm. I loathed that rule. Had to wear my clothes at least 2 to 3 days in a row, regardless of playing outside, working, or getting dirty. School was not fun, but I did get in a system where I wore different clothes underneath, and shed the outer layers on the bus. Eventually, in my later teens she slightly loosened this rule. No phone calls. If my friends ever called, I almost always had to say, "I will see you at school," and hang up. Clean your plate rule. I wouldn't give a dog what my mother cooked. If I wasn't finished with my meal first, she would grab my chair and throw it across the room. I then had to take my plate and go to the chair to finish my meal. I never stood a chance. My siblings could inhale a buffet like a shop vac, and she always gave them whatever portions looked the most appetizing first. They were of course allowed to belittle me when this happened. If I wasn't the first person in the kitchen in the morning to set up breakfast, I would have to take my clothes off and eat naked while everyone else ridiculed me. My father worked 16 hours a day on the farm, and wasn't around for most of this. When he saw it one day, he put an immediate stop to it. Damage was done though. Again, the game was rigged for me to lose. I had severe insomnia for years, laying awake every night for hours going over and over about whatever crap shit had happened that day, and how to fight the next crazy storm coming. I could never wake up in the mornings and just bound out of bed. We were not allowed to set our own alarm clocks, so as soon as the signal went off, the rest were already halfway down the stairs before I even realized what was going on. I was not allowed to watch the endings of TV shows/movies, and what we watched was strictly controlled. This is one that actually left huge mental scars for years. It may seem petty, but it's also been well proven that children grow much more attached to a storyline in TV/films than adults do. I need to know how that last plot twist ends, even if to an adult it is cheesy and predictable. My mother knew this, and would always barge into the den at the cliffhanger commercial break and turn off the TV. It was a form of hijacking information to deliberately keep me confused, and reinforcing her absolute control over every aspect of my life. To this day, I find TV shows I watched as a child and binge the series, just to see how each episode ends. I was not allowed to use public restrooms. I ruined our Disney trip because of how many times we had to go back to the hotel, not on site, when I was 6. And I quite honestly had accidents when I was far too old to do so, because my parents had my teachers reporting bathroom use to them too. There was no place I could safely use the restroom other than home without getting into trouble. Finally, I got to use public restrooms without punishment when I ducking went to college. No, I'm not kidding. But I got pretty good at hiding restroom use in high school, because the high school refused to report it to my parents. Why did none of these teachers spot the abuse? How? I refused to greet my sister's new boyfriend with more than a sup, so later that night, my mom Hulk smashed my laptop, double fist style. I know those feels. I wanted to be a scientist when I was a kid. My older sister saved up a lot of money to buy me a microscope kit, where you could make your own slides. It was awesome. One day my sister and I got into a fight about doing the dishes. My mother punished my sister by forbidding her from seeing her boyfriend. My mother punished me by breaking my microscope and by smashing it into my head with one hand and holding me against the wall by my throat in the other. It's shitty how parents can simultaneously abuse you and the things you care about. I lost all interest in science after that. The word disgusting was banned, and could have been considered just as bad as saying duck. We weren't allowed to close doors unless we were in the bathroom. We weren't allowed to watch Cartoon Network because it was garbage. They actually put a parental lock on Cartoon Network. The worst punishment was, one time they decided that we were such bad kids, my sister was like 14, I was 12ish, that they took everything we owned and bagged it up into garbage bags, and made us carry them out to a burn pile, and they burned everything we owned. All of my childhood memorabilia, pictures, clothes, diaries, everything. Burned it all. Dug up. When it was done burning the next day or so, later my sister and I looked through the ashes, and all that was left were 2 silver rings of hers that we cleaned off and kept. Crazy shit. I had all the usual punishments. No video games for a week, no TV for X nights, no pocket money this week, groundings, you name it, I probably had it at one point or another. One particular punishment tops the rest though, for creativity and cruelty. One day I was at a friend's place with my parents, and discovered that if we opened his bedroom window all the way, we could squeeze out of it and climb onto his roof. His bedroom was on the 2nd floor of their house, and they lived on top of a hill, so if we had fallen, we would have fallen probably 7 to 8 meters, then tumbled another 20 to 30 meters to the bottom of the hill. Anyway, both sets of parents walk outside at one point and hear us talking from the roof. They flip their lids and call us back inside. We scramble back into his bedroom and are sitting there terrified when our parents storm in. We get called down into the kitchen and are told to sit down at the kitchen table and await our punishment. My friend's dad opens up the pantry and starts pulling things out, things to make a sandwich. Then it hits us like a ton of bricks. Our punishment is to eat a sandwich made of the most ill-complementing, grotesque food combinations that he had at his disposal. The final product ended up being an unholy blend of Vegemite, oysters, anchovies, cheese, creamed corn, raw beef mince, and hot English mustard. I actually don't really recall what it tasted like. other than being awful. Looking back on it as an adult, I reckon it was just as much for their entertainment than our punishment, but damn if it wasn't creative. Bit late, but one day, the news said school might be closed for a cold day, like a snow day, but for when it's cold enough your exposed skin freezes in less than 10 minutes. My mom demanded I start walking to school, or she'd report me to the cops as truant. We argued. TV said school started late that day. I decided to go anyways, that being better than the arguing. She then decided I was to stay home for her to call the cops. I shoved past her, which she yelled at me was assault, and then locked me out of the house. Halfway to school, I was told the school was closed. I had to call my dad to be let in the house again. That day I promised myself I'd leave home as soon as possible. I've stayed halfway across the country from my mom ever since. You could earn a full-on ass whooping for uttering any of the following: shut up, but accusing someone of lying for any reason. We were not permitted to use the words lie, liar, lying. Instead we had to say, that's not the truth, or that doesn't sound right, or any other phraseology that wasn't some iteration of the word lie. As punishment, my dad would make us face a corner, stand on one leg, and keep both arms straight up in the air for a certain length of time. If our leg or arms went down, he'd double the time. Sometimes he'd give you a surprise visit from his belt or shoe if he was particularly pissed. At least I grew up to have fantastic balance. My parents once grounded me for 2 years for getting a B on my report card. Took everything out of my room besides the bed, and I wasn't allowed to do anything with friends. A year and a half into it, I asked if I could be ungrounded, and at that point they had actually forgotten what they grounded me for, but refused, because I must have done something bad if they grounded me. Also, they refused to let me stay up past 8 PM. Even in high school. I have a literal book worth of stories of the abuse I survived through, but one time Dr. Phil's show told my mother that having a bed was a luxury for kids, so she immediately took mine away. I slept on a cold wood floor, until I escaped that hellhole and cut off all contact. My dorm in college was the first real bed I'd slept in for 10 years. I didn't own a bed when I moved into my first apartment after college, so I was back on the wood floor. I'd moved in with the clothes on my back, my cat and her stuff, and my laptop, which I used to make money by transcribing at night, while I worked for $7 an hour, 12 hours a week at a deli. It was the only place that would hire me, since I didn't have access to my own car. I cried myself to sleep every night on that wood floor. It was a reminder of how much I'd failed, leaving myself back in that position. My roommate must have heard me crying one night, and figured it was back pain, because they lent me an air mattress to sleep on. It was like I'd moved into a 4-star hotel. Eventually I saved up a spare $50 and bought a bed off Craigslist. Sketchy, but I hadn't owned my own bed in 16 years before that. I still have the bed, and refuse to part with it, because I don't want to end up on the floor again. I have many chronic back problems that I don't think will ever be fixed, due to being forced to sleep on a floor starting at age 7. I take pain meds when I can, and do yoga, but it does not help. Sometimes when I can't sleep in my normal bed, I find myself still defaulting to the floor. When I wake up, I cry because I'm worried I'll always be like this. Parents have no idea how much they can dunk up their kids. When I was 13, no dating until university. When I was 18, no dating until I finish university. When I am 20 and about to graduate, no dating unless it's someone I choose for you. What the duck? Context: when I was 12-13, this girl had a crush on me, and I had no idea until someone told me. So I asked my parents what I should do. You know, I'm young, I didn't know what to do, and they forbid me from dating. Of course, the strictest parents create the most rebellious children. I've dated a few times during high school, and the last relationship in high school had an adverse effect on my academics. Broke up on the morning before an exit exam. In university, I met my current girlfriend, and under the assumption I was allowed to date in university, I thought it was a good idea to introduce her to my parents. Oh boy, that was a bad mistake. I got massive backlash saying that it was a bad idea, jeopardizing my studies for a silly relationship. 3 years later, she graduates, defers her postgraduate study for a year, and travels the world whilst still maintaining the relationship's strength. I couldn't drink water from my bathroom. My bathroom genuinely had colder water, and the best water in the house. Mom got suspicious when I'd leave to my bathroom for a few seconds every few minutes. I don't know what she possibly thought I was doing, but no more bathroom water, and I had to drink lukewarm peasant water like the rest of my family. Well, this one time I didn't want to finish drinking my milk, so my dad threw the cup across the room, shattering it and getting milk everywhere, while he proceeded to flip my chair over while I was still in it. Then he crouched over my body saying, "You wanna duck with me?" a bunch, and stormed out telling me to clean up the mess. And just lots more stuff like that. When I was in first grade, I had a writing homework assignment. My dad used to be weird about me erasing, because he wanted me to do it right the first time. I ended up erasing a lot on this homework, and my dad took the paper from me, ripped it in half and told me to start over. Turns out it was the last sheet of paper in the entire house, and I don't remember why, but for some reason we couldn't go and buy more paper that night. So ironically, I ended having to completely erase an old homework assignment in order to have a sheet of paper to start over on. I'm 22 now, and still give him crap about this. No TV. Not as a punishment. Just no TV, ever. Because apparently it lets the devil in. The second I, as the last kid, moved out, they started watching TV all the time. Edit. Wow, I am astonished at the interest this post has received. I am not surprised that no one guessed correctly. I will gladly sate everyone's curiosity. My parents were a part of a Christian religious offshoot named The Move, or The Move of God. It was founded by a man named Sam Fife, and is continued today by a man named Buddy Cobb. These are all facts which can be googled. I'm not breaking any Reddit rules by putting this out here. Some things The Move believed in that we had to endure as kids. Women had to wear dresses, no TV/video games, forced participation in religious ceremonies, little to no contact with the outside world. All my friends were Move athees, exorcisms. The school I went to was part of the Move group too. There was no escape. Wow, okay, just typing this out is kinda bringing me back to that place. I gotta stop now and take a break. When I was a kid, I had dysgraphia, but my parents didn't know that. So I used to take time to do my homework. My mom would threaten to throw my homework out the window if I wasn't done by a certain time. I lived in an apartment block, and this window was into a service shaft. We weren't allowed to have food upstairs, but I had food wrappers in my trash can, so they searched my whole room, ripping clothes off hangers, throwing stuff out of drawers, etc. And for 3 months I wasn't allowed in my room for anything unless accompanied by one of them. I slept on the couch. Not that crazy, just something that stuck with me, since I generally consider my parents to be good caring parents, mainly just overprotective. But when I was 15, I got really depressed, and kinda shut down academically and socially. My parents didn't know what to do with me. At one point, they ran out of ways to ground me, and my life was consequently made up of just going to school and coming home and lying motionless in bed, staring at the wall or sleeping. But my grades still hadn't improved, so they thought denying me of privacy/solitude by taking away my bedroom door would persuade me to get my grades up. Spoiler alert, it didn't, lol.